to a very special episode of Conversations. If you've caught the show before, you might notice that there's maybe one or two or three, maybe more people than you usually see. And this is the point because this is our holiday special wrap-up show. And what we're here to talk about is what we're always here to talk about is the conversations that matter. And we have some people who can't get in because of Wi-Fi, and the weather is terrible all over the place. So if they can get in, we will let them in. But otherwise, we'll hold down the fort. And we have amazing 5 different conversations that are going to come up today. So that'll probably enough without making your brains explode for what are the things I need to talk about in 2023. But one of the things I'm really excited to bring to you all today is that we're not here to just talk about a lot of conversations you've probably heard other people talk about. We're not here to talk about the perspectives that are common. We are here to talk about the things that really matter when it comes to humans interacting with workplaces in 2023. And so if you are in a scenario where you're trying to get more employee engagement, you're trying to attract quote unquote the best people, you're trying to get people to stay instead of leave, you're trying to address quiet quitting or the great resignation or all of these other silly things, that new words that have come up over the past little while, then these are the types of things that real humans experience. And if we can talk about the things that real humans experience, then maybe, just maybe, we can do something different in 2023. So I'm going to give all of the guests here an opportunity to quickly introduce yourself and give a little sneak peek into there's probably multiple conversations that you're very passionate about, but a conversation you're very passionate about sharing as part of this episode today. I'm going to go in the order. I think the way that people see this live is the same way I see it, but who knows? With technology nowadays, I'm going to go in the order that everybody logged in. So let's start with Irene, who was on just a couple of weeks ago, if you guys are keeping track.
Yeah, it was still very fresh, Tracy. So, hi everyone. I'm Irene, or in the Netherlands and also Indonesia, where I'm from. It's Irene. So that's perhaps, kind of. Sometimes I call myself Irene. I'm a depression coach for leaders, and I have a special touch with dance movement therapy. Because that's really kind of also the way that I found like really healing for myself and transformative. So the conversation I had with Tracy was quite recently was about movement as a language at work. And I would really love to, that's really something I'm passionate about bringing more movement, because that gives us more flow in our life, more creativity, more, in the context of doing business or in companies, bringing more innovativeness as well. So I'll keep the teaser there.
Yes, and this is one of the conversations I was really excited to bring back, even though it's also fairly new, is that even my husband yesterday was like sitting in his chair, right? And he was like, oh, I just feel so lethargic. And I'm like, you need to move, right? And it's so simple, but we just forget. We don't think to remember, to quote Home Alone. So maybe but I think it's a hugely important piece of the conversation, because if we want people to get into creative and innovative flow, then if we're being really rigid on what that looks like in terms of language as a movement as a language, maybe we're not being as fully expressive as we might be. All right, next, Carol Jean.
I'm Carol Jean Whittington, and I am the founder and principal of a company called Mind Your Autistic Brain. And I am passionate about all things accessibility and neurodiversity in the workforce, education, and healthcare. And specifically love to talk about right now, moving into 2023, how are we as companies and individuals finding our thrive at home and in the workplace in a way that is making all things more accessible to us as people, no matter our neurotype. And those things often are part of our 90-day onboarding. They're part of our manager training. They're part of the human and personal resources that we offer both internally and externally to our employees. And how do we access those ourselves?
Oh man, we're gonna go. I'm not gonna even get started on that one because I won't get to the rest of the introduction. So we're gonna leave that for where it is for now and definitely come back to it. So excited to have you, Carol Jean, as always. Nicole.
Hello, my name is Nicole Wicunas. I am beyond thrilled to be here. And I have several things to say in terms of what I do. Right now, I am, until the end of the year, the school-wide enrichment model outreach coordinator for the Renzulli Center for Creativity, Gifted Education, and Talent Development. That's a huge mouthful at the University of Connecticut. And I will be transferring over to the honor school during the new year to be an adjunct professor there, working on the social and emotional needs of the honor students when they come in. I also have created my own school. I call it the School on the Hill because until we get funded, it is the School on a Hill. But the idea behind it is a transformation completely of education. And I don't mince words when I say that, because my philosophy is that we have hit a large brick wall when it comes to education. It's beyond needing to be transformed. It is about starting from scratch. And when I look at it, it is the child as the center of the classroom, and the microcosm idea of, and Carol Jean and I had a conversation about this the other day, as did Tracy and I, it's this centering of the child in the classroom, looking at their interests, their learning styles, their preferred modes of expression. That's differentiation. And in that too, discovering that each of us has a light, and that light is really this amazing opportunity to recognize the beauty that is present in all of us. And that is really what allows for us to grow, not only grow and blossom and thrive, as Carol Jean expressed, but also to recognize that life can be about joy. Two sides to every coin, everybody. And we live in a dark side of the coin right now. Flip that coin over. And if we start to think in a different way and move in a different way, the world could be a much, much more beautiful, lovely place to be. And that's definitely where I'm headed.
And that is why you are here today, Nicole, because these are some of the conversations that I'm so passionate about. I have a 4-year-old, for those of you who are watching and don't know that. And it's been such an important part of the journey for me to help him figure out his uniqueness and his spark and navigate the systems that weren't built to maintain that spark and keep that, and to help him to understand that it's not that, I don't know, I think some people are intentionally trying to snuff out sparks, but I think most of the time it's just because we've built structures unintentionally that do that. And we do that, unfortunately, also in the workplace, because that's what we learned in school. And so that's what we know. So that's what we build. And it continues to be broken. So let's start at the root cause. I'm really excited to bring that piece of the conversation to light today, Nicole. Thank you for accepting the last minute invitation, since Nicole and I met on Tuesday, I think. And
we did.
I'm having this show on Friday. You have to come.
I was like, I'd love to.
Which is awesome, because the weather prevented a whole bunch of other people from attending. So this is great. It was meant to be. This is what the universe says is happening today. And last but very not least, Paul.
Hey there, everybody. Paul Howery in Seattle, Washington. Being here in Iceland now, which, well, you just never expect that here. I love where the wait, how would I say it in Indonesia? Irene? Is that how I say it?
Irene, okay. Yes.
And Carol and Nicole. What I do is I guide people into belonging in the self and in their organizations. And the reason I have a thing about this is, if there's one place that we truly live, And I mean, at the truest point of really, really, if I was to use the ignite, where your spark ignites regularly, it's where you belong. And
Mm.
you create that space also in the workplace, but the workplace tends to overlook the aspect of real belonging.
Mhm.
And it's when we do that that we get to self-belong, and we don't have to fit in from that space. And we get to truly be. And in the actual belonging with our company, whether it's a company tribe or a school or a social organization or family, in those places, it's not about fitting in. It's you are part of the tribe. That's part of the ways of being there. And you live to your fullest. And so it's belong, live, and perform. It's really what happens in our lives. So I like to all things nerdy and all things ancient and spiritual about getting to actual real belonging.
And we use Star Wars as a reference many times in that arena. So just in case that comes up today, that's what's happening. And I've been having so much fun having belonging conversations with Paul, because what we're learning is there's this intricate relatedness between personal branding, or how I see personal branding, which is the experience others have of you, and belonging. And it just is like, it's been so cool to explore that. And this is really what this space is created to do, is to ignite those unique perspectives on the conversations. And this is what I'm really excited about today, because we have 5, including me, different perspectives on, quite honestly, people said a lot of the same things, right? Yeah. How can we thrive? How do we move through things? Social and emotional needs, right? Belonging, personal branding, all of these things, just like everything in the human experiences. I feel like I say this every episode too, is like all of these things are so intricately connected because they're all part of the human experience. And if we talk about them as individual things all the time, then it starts to seem like things we can just check off on a checklist. But this is also why I know Paul has many opinions on this. A lot of, because he wrote an article on it recently, a lot of inclusivity and diversity and equity and belonging initiatives don't actually work because they become a checkbox thing. Irene and I talked about this on our episode too, right? About like, let's just make sure we all get up every 20 minutes. Okay, check, we got movement in the workplace. And you're like, well, that's like the minimum viable interpretation. Here we're not about minimum viable interpretation. But before we get too deep into any of these conversations, I do want to welcome everybody who is joining us. Welcome, Kim. And we have Ahmed. We have Regishka and Dan. Hi, Dan. It's great to see you. Really dramatic new profile pic, by the way.
I love that.
Yeah. Aref is joining us from Pakistan. So we have really international crew, because I think a lot of people in the US, and it sounds like Scotland, are having internet problems. So it's great to know that we have so many people who are able to join us live. This is a conversation for all of us, not just the 5 people that are live here today, but this is a conversation for everybody. And Rachel jumped right in on that. She was like, yeah, Ben, all of the things, collaboration and systemic thinking and humanity and emotions are valuable and all of these things. I feel like, well, if you've watched this show before, you will know that I tend to go for 1 hour with only one guest, and there are 5 of us today.
Yeah.
So there's no way we're going to be able to dive deep into all of the things. But what I'm hoping to demonstrate here through our conversation is just how intricately connected all of these things are, and how we can't really talk about one thing without talking about another thing. And so what I really encourage all the panelists today is if we're talking about something specific, about belonging, for example, just because Paul went last and it's on the top of my mind. And you know from your experience, from your coaching, from your own personal experience, how that is connected to movement, or how that is connected to neurodiversity, or how that is born in the education system. Please feel free to bring it up, right? This is the fun we get to have today, and it's the holiday bonanza, so as few rules as I normally have on the show are all out the window. We're doing what we want here today. And thank you everybody for joining us while we do that. So I really want to talk about one of the things Nicole mentioned in her intro, which is social and emotional needs. Because I feel like everything we talked about kind of falls under that big umbrella. So starting from a place of, let's start off where we feel like we are today, shall we? In the workplace, when it comes to social and emotional needs. Who would like to start on how well you feel we're doing in that arena?
Well, I'll throw out the first fact for that one that appears to show up in the studies, which
Sure.
is it's over 70% are actually feel that this is a complete deficient space for them. So much so that they're currently actively or passively looking for work elsewhere. So it's really simple. Where we're attended to and our needs are met, we tend to be okay there. And so there you go.
Well, and I think this is the interesting thing, right? Because in employment, and I went to business school, so for me, I feel like this was kind of just like the base level of understanding is that you go to work, you do tasks, you get paid to do the tasks. You don't get paid for social and emotional wellness. You get paid to do a task.
Right. This actually goes right back to education. We are stuck in the same system over and over again, and that's why I think I got pulled off of my brain tends to go in a lot of different directions at once. And I started talking about this sort of thanks, Carol Jean, the microcosm of the school, but the school has been created thinking about the way society works. So what do? We recreate the same system over and over and over again. And how many times have we looked at our own lives? And I'm happy to admit, in all its beauty, I'm 53 years old, loving every minute of it, and wouldn't want to go back to any other age that I ever was. Please, dear Lord, never again. And I will tell you that when I look at that and I think to myself, it's taken me this many years to really be happy. It's taken me this many years to sort of fix all the things that have happened to me as a result of the way society works. Now, that is not a blame game. That is an understanding of moving through the dynamism of the way society works and all the things that come at us through the way that society works. So I really believe that, and through my personal experience, as well as through working with children for over 25 years in a multitude of capacities, and through being in the actual workroom in a bunch of different ways, that if we transformed the way that we look at ourselves, and if we took responsibility and were given that opportunity, because now we throw things around like social emotional learning and let's figure out who we are. And everything is so much about these things where we go, like you said, so well, oh, let's do the checklist. This is not about a checklist. Everything takes time. And even our concept of time is a little bit off because we let time control us. And time becomes yet again another enemy. And so everything becomes something we must endure, something we must conquer, and then something we must, I don't know, look at in terms of, do we debate it? Do we hate it? And do we get an A+ on it? And that is always that external validity, as opposed to something that we look at in ourselves and say, hey, I just figured out that I may not be so great at math, but I'm an amazing human being when it comes to being able to articulate myself or work with others. But you know what? I know who the great math geniuses are. I know who's great at expressing themselves in another way. And I know that Irene is amazing at dance. Let me put my team together because we're about to open our own company. And I know exactly who to go to. There's no classroom that looks like that. There are classrooms that say they look like that, bless their hearts. And there are some that strive so much to be that. but we must look at starting from scratch again. Because businesses are doing the best they can, but it is very challenging because there's a lot of things that we have used to cover ourselves up in order to protect ourselves at this point.
I think this is really interesting. And Irene, I'd love to hear this from your perspective as well, because I feel like depression exists in a lot of those areas, right? We're talking about covering things up. And then we're talking about the need for transformation, which I think seem really big and overwhelming to people. So I'd love to hear from you what you're feeling based on what Nicole is sharing.
Yeah, first, like we started with social and emotional needs. And I think that's something that, kind of we acknowledge every one of us has that. But kind of because of the societal structure, through education or the workplace, there's a kind of a bit of this standard approach. And maybe, some people who are neurodiverse, for instance, or a bit different in their learning, or who have gone through some unique experience of their own, and they probably have different kind of social and emotional needs. And I want to connect that again. Actually, I was still kind of like really thinking about the belonging, because that is also a very human need. And at the base of this social emotional needs, including belonging and esteem and so on, that's really that that us human needs to feel safe. And that's where we can find ways for us to thrive, that we are not trapped in survival mode. So like when we feel safe, then we can grow and thrive. And perhaps because of a lot of this, like suppressing our own needs, because like in the past we were not allowed to express them, or to ask for it. And then we can then we have like all sort of these issues, like mental or emotional issues, and that can really build up. And I think really to kind of what I think and I feel also from my own personal journey is really about honoring those needs, the social and emotional needs, and whatever, it's all connected, also physical needs. Because when we experience these needs, how do we feel it? Perhaps like we become conscious about it right away, but I bet that there are always underlying, like in the body, something is going on as well, because we can sense it as sensations that gives us hints, signals. Okay, this is perhaps what you need. And the body doesn't lie. So that's kind of my my reflection on this.
Yeah, I think that's really, it's the honoring piece is really important, because I do think that is something that we don't talk about, right? I think that a lot of people probably in that 70% that you mentioned, Paul, are sitting there feeling things, right? I can assume those people are feeling things. They're just maybe not honoring the fact that they're feeling that, or think really, I talk about giving yourself permission for things, right? Giving yourself permission to feel that's okay to feel that 70% of other people are actually feeling the same. And so maybe there's not something that's broken with me. Maybe it's just that I need to listen to myself and explore what my body's trying to tell me. Because I also think, back to our 2 week ago conversation, Irene, was we don't have that knowledge. We don't understand the alphabet, right? That builds our emotional language, our movement language. So we can't just say like, oh, that's an apple. I know how to deal with an apple. Right? We don't know what that is. And so we have to build that up again. And in the corporate work environment, maybe we could create some more space for that. Right? Because I do feel like space is critical in being able to deal with any of these things. I want to go to Carol Jean next, because when it comes to honoring your social and emotional needs, I do think that this is a very big piece of the conversation when it comes to neurodiverse individuals. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that, Carol Jean.
So, if 70% of us, no matter our neurotype, are quietly feeling all of the things that aren't aligning. That is a social emotional awareness. We feel it in our body. And I equate this to taking my American blow dryer to the UK and plugging it in. Sparks will fly, you will burn out, right? And if we're talking about that, we all, and one of the number one searched terms of this year has been burnout. Mm-hmm. And that is the place that I come in, because I look at things and we experience this social emotional feeling. We feel things first before sometimes we can identify or articulate what the need is. And burnout is a result of consistent unmet needs. And if we have structures and systems, be that at work or in education, that are essentially taking the individual that is the American blow dryer and trying to plug it into our foreign UK-based outlet, our company or our education system, they're not aligning. And it's not about the plug being wrong or the outlet being wrong. It's that we aren't communicating to make sure we've got the adapter that goes between the two to make them work together. And sometimes that means that adapter is creating a common language, a common understanding. And most of the things that contribute to unmet needs is the awareness within ourselves. And then the other part of that is being able to communicate or articulate that to another person. And then also the framework of the people on the other end also knowing to ask those questions. So when we come into work and we're working in teams, one of the things, especially in the neurodistinct area of this, is understanding that communication comes in all forms. And it's not a matter of right or wrong, or weird or different, or this is how you do it, or this is how we do it in our company. It's that we all have a unique communication style and preferences, and it's having those conversations, because that's one of the biggest components to our feeling of belonging, is when we know that we are seen, heard, and understood. Our bodies feel it before anything else does. It transcribes into our head, and how we're showing up in the workplace and in our life all comes from a place of communication with ourselves and with other people. And how are we doing that within our structures? Are we checking boxes because we want to make sure that we're inclusive and we're doing these things, and we've got these pictures on our website, and we've got these pictures of a variety of people on our blog, but are we really vested in what that looks like, one person to another?
And I think that's really the crux of it, right? Because I feel like everyone wants to answer that question, yes. And if we don't answer that question, yes, then that makes me a bad person, right? I haven't been focusing on the right things. We've built our structure wrong, right? Like I failed and that's bad, right? And I know what Nicole's going to say about that and the education system. We can let her, but I think everyone knows what this is. But these are the things, right? So then we get these types of challenges. This is a great challenge, Carol Jean. Like, can we just look at our structures and actually say, okay, we did put these structures into place because we care about inclusion, or we care about expression, or we care about whatever it is that we thought we cared about when we created it, and measure that and say, like, did it accomplish that? Did I actually retain diverse employees? Did I actually hire anybody else who's neurodiverse, right? Like, just looking at these types of things and not being so attached to the positive outcome. Because if your goal is to actually achieve that thing, I'll tell you, this is a thing that drives me nuts from a sales and marketing perspective all the time, because people just do things and then they're like, yeah, we did things. And you're like, great. What did it accomplish, right? Like, did it accomplish what you're trying to do? Did you like sell things? Did you like build a funnel? Did you, like, oh no, but we did them. Okay, great. Good job. Like, this is, and we've gotten to a place in society, and specifically in work, where we just check the boxes, right? I go to work, I work 9 to 5, and that's my job, right? I sit my butt in the seat from 9 to 5, and that's it. And that never was the point, right? The point of you doing a thing was to provide a specific value to the company, right? So I don't know. I'd love to hear everybody's opinion, because this is a thing that I struggle with a lot. Like, where besides the education system, so it probably just goes deep, but why do we get so attached to sticking to these things that have provided us a negative outcome? They haven't helped us achieve what we want to. And what can we do? We've thrown the word transformation around a whole bunch of times already, right? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, not changing a marketing tactic or changing your work hours so you get Fridays off, right? We're talking about legitimate transformation in how we treat people at an organizational level. So how do we go from this, like, really ego-driven space of this is how we do it, and this is how we've done it, to a place of we legitimately care about people, and this is how we're going to change so we can show them that that's true. Nicole, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah. I just wrote down like a list of like 5,000 things, but you literally just said the word. You said the word ego. If ego is your main focal point, then the next two questions arrive simultaneously. What do you care about and where are you going? No matter who goes into a company, into a school, into a classroom, into a business meeting, starting a company, starting anything, where are you going? What are you doing? What is your purpose? Are, I hope, like your primary questions. And then once you get in there, we see this, of course, in education all the time. You have a hierarchy. It's certainly not a hierarchy of needs, is it? It's a hierarchy of position. It started out philosophically, I guess, speaking, about how are we going to help children to become the best that they can be. Now, you can say something in your mission statement. You can say anything you want every day of your life. But if you are not vulnerable to the actual mission that you have created, if you're not even aware of the mission, and I'm going to make that even more simple, because that's the thing. We get so entrenched in language and in actually fleshing out things that it becomes so heavy that we forget why we started to begin with. What is the kernel? What is the essence of what you do? Do you have a reason for why you do what you do? For me, my reason is that I know what it looks like when a child's face lights up because someone saw them. Someone noticed how beautiful they are, regardless of everyone else in the room. I know what happens when I work with a teacher and somebody recognizes that they have something beautiful to share with the class that is separate from the curriculum that somebody forced them to teach. And I know what it looks like when I work with a parent who suddenly realizes they're not the enemy in the classroom, but the most important person next to the child. That is, for me, what it means to be present and to have a sense of, why am I here? What is my purpose? My purpose is to find the gift within you so that you can recognize it and that you know that that's the right thing for you. It may not have anything to do with anything I saw. I'm just there to help you. I always see myself as like, I'm here to help provide channeling. I don't know what else word to use, because that's how I help you to discover yourself. And so worthiness, one of the things that came up for me also when you were talking was I was picturing the classroom, and then I just transfer that into a boardroom or an office. And we've all been in those different places. Many people sit there and you know what they're thinking. And I know this from the research in education is they sit there and they say, God, I'm so stupid. Thank God nobody knows how stupid I am. If anybody knew how stupid I was, they would fire me immediately. Children in their brains, when they get tests back or, they go, oh, please, dear Lord, let me not get that test back. And then if they get a 100 or they do well, they go, wow, did I cheat? Holy cow, how did I get that grade? How did I pass that? Because I'm not smart. Somebody made a mistake. How do I know that? Because I was that kid. I never thought I was smart. I never thought I was good enough. I never thought I was worthy. And I spent my whole life wondering why I didn't belong. And so now I spend my whole life helping other people to believe, just like Paul talked about, that we can be part of that tribe. But you can't be part of a tribe until you recognize that you are worthy, that you have something beautiful to give. Companies can keep pushing for that end line, but if you don't know why you're there to begin with, you're talking to an empty shell.
Yeah, and I think this comes back to kind of where you started that, Nicole, which is what questions are we actually asking, right? And I know we've talked a lot too kind of about this, like our you-ness, right? And seeing that spark and feeling smart and those types of things. And I really want to bring in some of your work on belonging, Paul, that is really about this, like the interrelatedness. Because there's also, like we talked about ego, right? We've had some really great comments. Let me go through the comments really quickly here. We have Gary, welcome. Rachel talking about outputs versus real desired outcomes. So that's what we're currently talking about for those of you who are just joining us. Seb was talking about leaving your ego at the door. And this one was interesting to me because I think there's a belonging conversation here, Paul. This is not about you, and you don't have to make it all about you, at least not today. That's the best mindset to start with. And I think from the belonging point, though, there is you are a critical component, right? Like the fact that I've been in an environment where I made it all about the other people. And I was a manager and I made sure to take care of all the other people. And now I like to use this visualization of as if my team was an island with sun and palm trees and tropical drinks and all the swimming pools, right? All the good stuff. And they loved working there. And I was the wall that was constantly being battered by this like unending storm on the outside. And I didn't belong in the storm, and I didn't belong in this sunny place. I was this wall that was just protecting people in the middle. And I think that this, with a lot of the leaders that I spoke to, is a pretty common thing. And one of the things that happened to me was when I left, I ended up leaving. I stayed for a long time because of my team. And then when I ended up leaving, within 6 months, my entire team had left as well. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, yeah, so it was me doing that. But I think sometimes we forget the me component because we're so afraid of the ego, but the me component is important. So how do we balance these types of things in the belonging conversation?
Well, this is where there's the myth that the ego is bad. And I will say this, you can't belong unless you're part of the equation. And this is, I'll label this, and this will be a whole nother discussion, the devil in servant leadership. You're walking a path to evaporating and everything collapsing. And there's just no way around that. You have to exist for you to belong. You have to matter in the space. And this is different than affirmation. It's the conscious dynamic choice that happens between two or more people, but it always happens in a one-to-one space, even in a place of many. Just like right now, I'm sitting here with 4 other people, and one of these people I actually have an extended relationship with, where we've had time, which means I'm automatically keying in at different things more quickly and internally and I'll use the term automagic kind of way. And we're having probably some signals back and forth where we're noticing those triggers, and it's actually changing how things work also. And this is where I'm going to talk about belonging. And in design of space matters so much. It's not being affirmed. It's not being, you get to express yourself and show up and be appreciated and so on. That's affirmation and appreciation. But it is the space where and Tracy's heard me say this stuff over and over.
Just say it again, because not everybody has.
It's where you feel, own, and care for somebody, and big and, not so that they feel, own, and care for you. And it's in the successes, dreams, and failures. And it's a dynamic relationship of choice that's for each other. So I may get all sorts of kudos and warm fuzzies, and I can show up in whatever way I want to, but I can still do all that and not belong, because I'm not even considering myself. I have left my ego at the door. And I realize, leave your ego at the door, it makes you a great leader. No, it makes you a leader that'll collapse. And, because the second I cannot count, that means someone on my team cannot count also. And this is different than, and boy, my brain is going all over, especially with some of the stuff you said, Nicole, earlier. The education system, tangent, is designed to make compliant, I'm not even say people, compliant task doers. And that's not a space of belonging. That's purely a space of fitting in. And so if I want to be a leader, I tell you, put your ego at the door. In other words, shut up and fit in. There's a shut up and fit in space that even exists in leadership development these days that misses the point of a leader who also cares for themselves in the space, that is willing to go into harm's way for the people that they care about. That's the difference. And what's funny is this flies in the face of psychological safety. Psychological safety is, I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm not in danger. When we care for each other, and if we want to have a spark, the spark is usually, no, you're not, I'm not letting that happen to so-and-so, or I want to make something so good for so-and-so, towards that why aspect of why I might do something. That's the belonging space, because, and there's the own part in feel, own, care. People have a discomfort with that. But the truth is, I don't say, hi, this is Eliza, the person I married. I say, this is Eliza, she's my spouse, or she's my wife. Or if you don't call a person a best friend, you say my best friend. Or this is my yellow lab, Gracie, who is my sweet little dear dog. And it's because there's this emotional co-owning space. If someone doesn't say, yeah, you're my friend, and says, you're a friend. Oh, this is my friend. Oh, yeah, he's a friend of mine. The body doesn't lie kind of thing that was said earlier. Your body goes, oh, wait a minute. And we know that. So there is this dynamic space that happens for us when we belong. And that's where we're actually choosing them and they're choosing us. And we go forward together. And our business system, and I'm going to say this is what influenced the education system, was designed for compliant task doers. It wasn't made, and this Taylorism, if we go back into like 1890 to 1910, which I'm sure you're aware of that one, Nicole. In that space, the business world didn't decide to make full human beings. It decided to make compliant, task doers. I can't even call it beings, because it's the opposite of beings. And that led to an education system, which leads to a workplace that says carrot and stick. If you do this, you get rewarded. If you don't, you get fired. And if we're in a tribe, we don't do that. And I'm not tribe primitive, tribe anthropology. This is how our neurobiology actually works, kind of stuff. And so, and it's so dynamic that we're changing on the fly, and we know it instantly. So that's what I would say. The belonging piece is that it's this dynamic relationship that's always in play. And actually, one last thing, and it mediates how we fear and how we aspire. And so, if we belong, instead of fear of, we fear for. Like, I don't want to let somebody down, or I'm going to learn more so that I can be a better participant on the game or the play or the work or whatever. On the aspirational side, it shifts too. Now we don't aspire at the expense of somebody. We aspire with somebody. Matter of fact, we won't leave somebody behind even in the aspiration. You always hear the thing, don't leave somebody behind in a battle. Well, don't leave somebody behind in also the win. And so, and that's the shift that only happens in belonging. And that's from fight, flight to unite and fight together. So yeah, I'll stop there. That was enough.
I just want to, if I may, comment quickly. Paul, that was brilliant and so lovely. And I always say when something hits right, you can feel it, you know, and you just clarified my passion so brilliantly and how I feel. And I so appreciate that, especially this being my first time on one of these. And I loved also what you said about that correspondence, that understanding that you have with your friend, and that becomes like this conversation that doesn't necessarily need conversation. And that is that vulnerability. And you know what else it is? The word that kept popping up in my head as you were speaking is risk. We must move forward. And that is what is escaping us, because everything that we do now, everybody wants the end result before we even know where we're going. And that's true in classrooms. It's true in business. And you know what? The only thing, think about, Tracy, when you started this, you said, well, you know what? Everybody's here because we have this storm. We can plan and orchestrate every single detail. And then we can come up and we can show up and everything can be different. That is not only a classroom in business, that's our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why, as you said, the ego is different. This is not a bad ego. I need to know who I am so that I can show up for you. Otherwise, you're working with a stranger because I'm a stranger to myself. And that is not a good thing, because I need to be able to be present so that you know that I'm here for you. And that's the other complete side of it. And I just, my passion is enormous and your clarity is stunning. And I know your passion obviously is enormous too. And you've worked hard on creating this clarity. And I just, amen. That was brilliant. I just had to say that. I am very, very happy right now. That just made me so happy. I'll be quiet.
Oh, and it like so much for me staying on time. There's like way too much good stuff happening here, because I also want to give Irene and Carol Jean the opportunity to, like, we've talked a lot about this like real concept of belonging, right? And
can I ask Irene something particular relative to that?
Go for it.
Something she said at the very beginning, which was movement. So I am an absolute neuro nerd. And there's a book called Brain Rules by John Medina, which is absolutely incredible. Brain Rules. Brain rule number 1 is brain requires movement. Yes. And so, and without a healthy brain, you don't get to belong. And so I kind of was curious about your thoughts on movement. You said dance also, right? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how that creates the spark.
I can share also, like, from my personal experience. Thanks for this very beautiful question. You know, because dance, you know, there's a whole umbrella, kind of a whole assumptions as well. Kind of, it can be like learning, you know, to better coordinate your body, or but the way I did it was like really to explore my own expression, and that's my way to connect with myself, to understand who I am, and also to there's a lot of foundation in neuroscience indeed, because, you know, movement is really how we learn. It's our first language as a baby, as we figure out the world, as we figure out relationship. And even as adults, like there's so much connection with the brain, like new pathways are created, when we move with enough variations throughout our life.
Mhm.
Neuroplasticity. And to be able to move, we also need to be able to sense within our body as well. Interoception and proprioception, or all these fancy terms I don't remember anymore. And that's also how we relate with other beings, or with our surrounding. How we can regulate ourselves, like through the body. And when you mentioned about this, like this interaction that feels auto magic, that's there's probably like when we feel a lot of empathy, with the others, like we feel belonging, we feel connected. And there's also so much going on there in our brain, like there's this mirror neurons that are kind of
Mhm. Yeah.
firing, and then like, oh yeah, we feel so close with this person, like emotionally. And and that's kind of really I think, like, to open up also, like, on this, sense of ego and or or belonging. Like, it's really about, in the end, it's really about balance, how we navigate that, because there's no one recipe, there's no one blueprint, and we really need to tune in within ourselves, and also kind of really be open to feedback, whether it's non-verbal feedback from the other or verbal feedback. And that's kind of my thoughts about this.
That's a super interesting point too. I feel like I have one of these moments every time I talk to Irene when I think about movement, right? Is that because I clearly haven't thought about it in a lot of depth, but that the non-verbal feedback is movement, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a withdrawing, it's looking down, right? Like all of those things are very tied into how in an ecosystem we're moving with each other, right? Like I call it vibe a lot. But it all of these things, like, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear too from our like guests here today in the conversation, like, well, in the chat, like what are the things that you are realizing you've never looked at before, as part of the conversation? Because these are the things, these are the gold nuggets that are going to lead to the conversations that matter in 2023. So you get to wrap up, Carol Jean, because everybody talked a whole bunch and you're so what, like, I would love to hear like any of the things that we covered, but I think too, from, I know you and I have talked a lot about masking, about the concept of fitting in. I know that even Seb had shared earlier up that we thrive and grow where we fit in, which I think we've all established we thrive and grow where we belong, not where we fit in. And so I'd love to share from your perspective in that fitting in versus belonging, how to break that down, and specifically how we can. The last time you were sharing, one of the things that it reminded me of when you're talking about like different communication styles, and one of the things I spoke to about with Irene was like kids throwing a tantrum is actually a language, right? Like they're using movement to express something, and we just say, no, that's bad, don't do that, instead of trying to figure out what people are trying to express. And so I'd love to hear, as a wrap up from you, what have you seen in that arena? And also, what are some of the things that you have seen work through your coaching and consulting that help people just start making that transformation, if even in the tiniest of ways?
We talk about, and I love that you brought this in because part of my background is in vision science. So Dr. Robert C. Pepper and Dr. Mary Nordgren have a book called Stress Point Learning. And one of the things that is really impactful is that meaningful movement creates photographic memory. And one of the things that is most often misunderstood, especially when we're talking about neurotypes, is movement. And it is a language, it's an expression. As I sit here and I have this is called a fidget ring, but this is something that helps me focus and being able to move in a way. And when we're talking about different frameworks, different environments, and how do we feel that we belong in an environment, So often what I begin with is we have to start internally. We have to start within ourselves. You know, as a society, as a culture, as companies, we say we value innovation. We value, you know, people who think differently. Yet, when it comes to the implementation and it comes to how we are educated and then how that fitting in that box and being compliant transfers to the work world, those environments and structures stifle innovation and creativity. And some of the most innovative and creative people I know are neurodistinct. We see things in a very unique way because our brains are wired differently. So I see things from a 50,000 foot view, and I see all of the minute details all the way down and how all of the parts move and connect together. And in past positions where I have worked in a corporate environment where it has been toe the line, fit in the box, you do it this way, this is how we do things here, and you try to fit into that so that you feel like you belong, but you don't feel like you belong within your own self. So much of that comes from being able to connect to your body, being able to look within yourself and know these are my needs. This is my sensory profile needs. And hello, humans, we all have them. So it isn't about, you know, an ADHD or autistic person having sensory needs. We all have them. And when we can start looking at one another with compassionate curiosity, then we are then becoming the adapters between the American hairdryer and the UK plug. When we can start to bridge these things from a place of discovery and compassionate curiosity, and we are connecting to ourselves and taking ownership that we got to understand our own stuff. This is not all external, having to rely on everything and everyone around us to create or fix or be something that we need. We have to identify what it is that we need. We have to be able to transcribe that into a communication that we can share one to another, and the person on the other end is willing to listen and open to listening, compassionately curious, and say, hey, how do we connect more effectively one to another? You know, how is it that we, in a working environment, share our peak performance hours on a team so that we know, hey, this is when my brain is firing, this is when your brain is firing. You know, how do we meet in the middle so that we both are coming with some spoons to the conversation and not completely depleted? And how do we start managing those things within ourselves first? And then how do we start communicating that to another person and within our teams? Because it's not about everything happening externally. And we do have to have frameworks and things that create this, but we also have to have the understanding and the desire to also look at our own stuff and go, okay, I own this. This is mine. I've also taken the time to figure out what it is that I need. And I'm looking to find ways to communicate this, because it's about bringing this together, because that's where innovation, that's where belonging, that's where those sparks ignite, and that's where we have combustion.
Oh, I'm on mute. Isn't that what we all want? Right? That's why I was on mute, because of getting too excited. But that's what we want at work, is it not? Right? Like, we want to bring all these people together so we combust and light fires and be seen from space, right? Like, isn't that what we want? And I think this comes back to what Nicole mentioned about asking the right questions, right? Like, can we remove all of these other societally important, or not to attack Rockefeller habits. There's lots of good stuff in Rockefeller habits, but just be like, let's just follow the Rockefeller habits and then we'll all be perfect, right? Like, maybe. Maybe there's like a uniqueness of yours that can actually make you that big, and that's what made them successful. And there's a way for you to explore how you, as a group of people with specific brand values and specific corporate culture, can make this work, right? Like, how would you do it? How would we do it? And to me, that's where the branding piece comes into it, right? Like, I feel like deep down inside, or at least originally, this is what we wanted, right? Yes, we burn brighter. We all burn together. But we just come, and then we don't ask ourselves how I don't know if all of you saw my post about this, but I talked about having to sit underneath a fire blanket. That actually happened in my life, just so you know. I did not make that up. Who could make that up? That would be crazy. I actually had to do that. And this is what we do. We create processes and systems that just throw fire blankets on top of people putting out the fire, right? And we just let it happen because we get complacent. And instead of asking ourselves about how can we literally show up every day and create a space to ignite all of these people? This is where this like compassionate curiosity comes to play, right? And I think this is a great takeaway set of words for this conversation today, because what if all of us in the conversations that matter to you and your business and your family and your social network and all of those things, what if all of us showed up with just a little more compassionate curiosity? How could that change how the conversations are making a difference with people? Because honestly, Seb was talking about passion, right? That's where passion lives. Passion doesn't live under the fire blanket. And like, for one, I don't want to be the person who's going around throwing fire blankets on other people's sparks. And again, I don't think most of our managers, who some of us have had, that might say that was the actions, that's how it felt to be there. I don't think those people are intentionally doing that. And so when we can have conversations like this is where we get that self-awareness. Seb said a whole bunch of great things. I'm sorry, Seb, I couldn't keep up with all of your great comments. There was more. But we have to know how we are contributing. And if it's important for us to contribute, if it's important for all of you who are in the chat, I know it's important for all of us because we're all getting excited, but if it's important for you, then look at what are you doing? What might you be doing that you could stop doing that would eliminate some fire blankets? What are some things you could see that you could start doing that would help? What are some of the things you can see and celebrate about yourself that you are currently doing that are setting those sparks? I like to call it start, stop, keep, everybody, if you weren't quite listening. What can I stop doing? That's putting out sparks. What can I start doing to light sparks? What can I keep doing because I currently do this to light sparks, right? These are activities we could do with ourselves at any time. It's more fun to do it with peeps. So you should probably connect with all of these people who were tagged in the original post, because if you like this conversation, you're going to want to stay in the conversation with them. But this is the point. And this is, at the end of the day, what helps us to be courageous. Because showing up and doing something by ourselves will always feel hard. If we show up and we feel like we're doing something with people in being belonging, it feels much, much easier to do that. Oh man, I knew I wasn't going to be able to stay on time. I'm sure someone was private chatting me about how long I went, and I'm like, I know, but I can't cut it off. I'm the worst at cutting off a good conversation. And this could have gone for much, much longer. So I do encourage you to connect with all of the peeps on here, continue the conversation, continue to explore how you can bring compassionate curiosity to the world, and just let's not get rid of actual fire blankets, because if we need them to put out fires, then that's good. But let's not use them to put out people's sparks. Okay. And with that, everybody, I want to thank you, Irene, Carol, Jean, Paul, and Nicole, for such a wonderful conversation that literally I could stay here all day and feel good about it, because I love being in conversation with all of you. I'm wishing you all the very merriest of holidays, no matter how you celebrate, no matter what you celebrate, no matter who you celebrate with, no matter if you are still not celebrating. This is a time to celebrate being you and your you-ness, and how you can keep as much of that alive. Don't let yourself be your own fire blanket that puts you down.
That was good.
Let's just say it that way. I'm going to just go running with this fire blanket thing. I can't believe I talked to Nicole about this the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, this might be where my whole personal branding thing came from. I don't even know. But literally, we can all thank my high school physics teacher for that. Thank you, Mr. Albrecht. So we do not have any episode next week, because I am taking the week off, and I'm doing it, and I'm going to be in the mountains. So hopefully I have bad connectivity anyway.
wow.
Yes, I'm very excited. And it's supposed to not be freezing cold. Yes. So let's hope that manifests. And to all of you, I wish you the most wonderful time, the most wonderful new year. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.
Oh.